Well, hello there, guys. Today I'm going to take a look at what to me is one of the most fascinating mods for Paradox games. And it's for a game that's honestly not particularly that well represented, I think. It's a newer game, and not a lot of people are into it, and that is Imperator Rome. The mod we're taking a look at is the Bronze Age mod. This goes back to Rome is capable, and really shows you what it's like under the Bronze Age. It also lets you play as some incredible nations, specifically Troy, Upper and Lower Egypt. And I'm going to show you guys those nations right now. So if we take a look at Waset, this is actually the pharaoh of the Lower Nile. And you can see we've actually got the Nile represented here. During this time period in the Bronze Age, people wouldn't go too far from the river itself. There simply was no other way to get water, and there was no other way to trade for food. So this is very realistic the way they've set this up, and there's a number of different tribes you can take here. Of course, if you want to take the path of the pharaoh, you're going to have to subjugate all of Egypt under your control. The same goes for the pharaoh of the north, Merihator Keti, over here. And he's got this entire area here. He's also got an interesting lake nearby, and he needs to expand northwards. So ideally, if you're playing as either of these factions, you want to try and grab Upper or Lower Egypt, or just grab Egypt in its entirety. Now, the one that I am really excited about is actually this one, and that is Troy. That's right, the ancient kingdom of Troy. You're actually playing here with Pirwa Anaramati. I think the names are probably somewhat messed up. This is something in the actual mod that they do need to improve on, because this is much more like an East Indian name, not necessarily a Trojan name. Nonetheless, I think the main focus of this mod really is on these pharaohs factions in the north and south of Egypt. We've also got legendary thieves under Knave Tarkunis, King Knave Tarkunis. And when we take a look over here at the Aegean from this particular perspective, you can just see the massive scope of this mod. It actually only encompasses Greece, Greece, Turkey, the Middle East, and parts of North Africa. So it's much smaller in terms of scale within the actual Imperator map. But when you look at all of these individual kingdoms, and I mean each one of these is an individual kingdom, there is a lot of gameplay here. Just a tremendous amount of gameplay. I think we're going to jump into really the highlight of the mod, and that is going to be Waset, the empire of southern Egypt, and just take a look at some of the mechanics and get a look at the mod itself. So, we're in the first intermediate period. The land of Egypt has for several decades now been stricken by severe droughts causing starvation and chaos. The glorious old kingdom has collapsed, and the centralized rule of Egypt has gone with it. The old governors and their provinces, also called nomarchs and nomes, have become independent. See, we got some issues here with spelling. I am a grammar you-know-what, so I'll catch that. But the 10th dynasty at Hesse still claim continuity from the old dynasties of the Old Kingdom. The more ambitious nomarchs, most not satisfied with just one nome, see their opportunity to found a new divine dynasty blessed by the gods to restore the Nile Valley. When we go into Inventions, I think the Inventions are fairly similar here as to Imperator, but I'm definitely going to go for that property tax. We're going to have to pay for it, but I think we absolutely need to unlock this discovery. Now, some issue here with the discoveries is they actually cost quite a lot of money, so I'm not sure I want to immediately go for them. Another thing that you'll notice is that the armies themselves are a little smaller than we're used to, especially if you play as Troy. You start with an army of about 900 men, which of course is not something that a lot of people enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice to the gods in the name of the divine pharaoh, and hopefully we get some respect here. But we've also got some entire families here that have been scorned. It looks like potentially even our own family is scorned currently. We also don't have a queen. So obviously grabbing a queen and continuing the dynasty is definitely what we want to do here. Now, just fascinating start, of course. The unmarried ruler we absolutely need to fix here. So let's just try to pick the best of the best here. We're looking at the skills, and it looks like Satya is going to be the best. So we will hopefully marry her. Am I gone mad? Come on now. Arranged marriage? There we go. Wonderful. Let's arrange the festivities, and hopefully now we can actually get a child. At that point, we'll have a lot more legitimacy over these nomarchs, etc. And I think the first nomarch we have to go for is going to be Nakada. It's the nomarchy of Nakada here under Shemai Narmermin. We've got to end his rule once and for all. So I'm already going to start putting my forces here on the front lines. I'm also going to change my commander, and that's right, I'm putting the Pharaoh himself in charge of these fights. And look at that, we even have ancient Egyptian shields here, the cattle shield, which I think is beautiful. And I think it really, especially for pharaohs of this time period, we have to show ourselves. We need to prove ourselves, etc. So, etc. Influence of the Kui Amun family. The fate of the kingdom and that of the Kui Amun family is and always will be intertwined. It is therefore a matter of great urgency. There are currently not enough Kui Amun persons of quality ready to shoulder the responsibilities of the state. So we're going to go ahead and actually bring our rise one up here in state power. We can, of course, get down to the very basic decision section, excuse me, not the decision section, character section, and try and give these guys some different holdings, etc. For instance, we could grant Sabu a holding over here, and we'll probably get a little more respect with him. But it's very important to, of course, get these families that dislike us back on our side. They feel hated, and they're never going to trust the Pharaoh if we don't support them economically here whenever we can. I'll also start recruiting cohorts wherever I can. Definitely some spearmen, definitely some skirmishers and archers. And you can see here the supply train is going to be quite important, especially if we get away from the Nile here, or even if we're just going into enemy territory. That's something I might potentially get. But what I really love are these bronze axemen. And of course for that, we do need to get some bronze ore, bring it into port here, and eventually we'll actually be able to make an even stronger unit that can stand up to most of these other tribes. Now, as for this guy, I'm immediately going to go to fabricating a claim, but we have claims on 2 Falcons. No, okay, never mind. So we can actually go to war with this guy right now, I believe. Yes, we can. Of course, before we go to war, I would want to make sure that we have an adequate force, and only then would I bring the might of Lower Egypt on these nomarchies. I think Thebes is another really interesting nation in this particular mod, so I'm going to go ahead and select them. So let's take the Thebans, and this is just I would say the best starting point in Greece is to take Thebes, try to grab Athens over time, take all this area, and if we look at Athens itself, it might be one of the only areas in the Bronze Age that's actually fairly I guess, non-barbarian. They seem fairly civilized, as it were, and we want to reach that point. But currently, Thebes is still quite a ways behind Athens. So to actually succeed under Theban rule, we would have to find some way to grab these neighboring states and, of course, subjugate them under our control. That's one thing I think is just amazing about this mod. You're not just focusing on, like, the huge, battles between Greece and Rome or Egypt and Carthage or any of that stuff. You're really focusing on much smaller wars. And at least for me, it's much more appealing to deal with these smaller wars than it is to deal with those major wars all the time. This really allows you to carve out your own empire from the old world. And, of course, since we're in the Bronze Age, there is a bunch of time to do that. I also couldn't help but notice that Crete, despite being a place I generally ignore, looks like a really cool starting point here for anybody playing this mod. Maybe just to unify Crete under one ruler, that would be pretty amazing. And in comparison to all the kingdoms out here right now, Crete would actually be the largest kingdom if we were able to unify it. I think currently the largest one is Ebla over here, under the Levantines, I believe, and these guys do have their king here, Abalim Yanudu. I think that's fairly accurate for Middle Eastern kings, and this, of course, would be a good starting point, too, just because you've got a lot of different places to move towards. You're quite a large kingdom here, as you can see, at least for the Bronze Age, a good starting point as well. I mean, there's just so much here to do, and I think you can go from this literally hundreds of different ways, and just, of course, get into the game. Now, this mod is by no means perfect. There's a few things that need to be added. We, of course, took a look at the rulers of Troy here, and maybe this is an accurate Trojan name if somebody wants to tell me, but Kuni Tirountia? No, this seems like much more an Eastern Indian name or maybe even African name, so they do need to update that. But besides that, I would highly recommend this mod Go give it a look, guys. What's the worst that can happen? If you want to see me play as one of the nations in this mod, hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe. And I really mean drop a comment down below and say, Agrippa, I want to see you play this mod, and let me know what nation you want to see me play it as. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Again, this mod focuses really on the Hellenic world. We don't have Italy in this. We don't have the Romans at all. We're totally focused here on the Hellenic world. Turkey, the Middle East, North Africa. Still, so much playtime here and so much to do. Catch you on the next video, folks.